Exploring is not the same with a map. Imagine climbing to the top of a beautiful hill overlooking the islands near Hiroshima in Japan. And at the top, instead of taking in the gorgeous view, you whip out your phone, and instead of taking a picture, you glue your eyeballs to the corner of your view and try to find out where to go next. That's an extreme analogy, but it's what minimaps and HUDs can feel like today. Back in the day, levels were linear, objectives were clear, and getting lost wasn't really a thing. But as games evolved, worlds became vaster and objectives became more intricate, players needed guidance. And that's where the minimap comes in, a tool that gives the developers a way to guide players through their games. And minimaps are useful. They can help you go places without constantly having to whip out a full map. They're convenient, they save a ton of time, and they can help make a giant world less daunting. But at the same time, minimaps can come with some downsides that you might not realize at first. That is, until you need to look up. I recently finished playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It was a dark and rainy day outside when I first booted up the game. Now, this might sound like a dystopian gamer take, but the skybox and the views in that game are so good that I legitimately felt like I was outside on a nice day. And I leave my house pretty often, but the sky just looked so good. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth goes out of its way to not have a minimap enabled by default, even though it is an option. Those of you who played the game will know that it is absolutely gorgeous. Every single hill and location is handcrafted to be enjoyable to look at, and in combination with the music, it is extremely immersive. Minimaps are made to be useful. They really draw your attention in. A great example is in Apex Legends. Say what you will about the game, but it visually looks great. When I play though, I constantly look at the minimap. Yeah, it's important to know where you're going and to communicate with your team, but it makes the game a lot less immersive. Apex has a lot going on in the game world, but I honestly couldn't tell you where anything is in the map, because I just never needed to know. League of Legends is another great example. It turns the game into a checklist of tasks that you have to do, rather than a world you can play around in. Oh look, blue buff is free, maybe I can gank bot, it's pushing hard, the tower went down. It's a little subtle, but I feel like it takes away the enjoyment of the game quite a bit. Of course, the level design matters too. I beat Fire Emblem Three Houses 4 times, and I have over 80 hours in that game. And I still couldn't tell you a thing about the way the monastery is laid out. It's a pretty dense area and there's a lot of people and things to do, but I ended up just jumping around to hit my support conversations and have food with my waifus. I mean bros. When the game gives you the information you need to take the fastest route to hit every quest marker, it's hard not to. The problem is that speedrunning between NPCs and triggering their dialogue icons just isn't that fun. The convenience and the detail in the maps just took away that aspect of exploring, which sucks because I love exploring in other games. Elden Ring is the classic example of a world without a minimap, but I'm going to use Dark Souls as a better example. Dark Souls has a thrill to searching the map. You never know where the next bonfire is, you just have to keep going and hope it's the right way. Every time there's a fork in the road, you have to memorize it so you can go back to it. You never know where there's a secret treasure or a new area around the corner that you didn't check. And in the back of your mind, you know there's no map, so you better hope you remember where you are. It works because you constantly die in that game and you have to see the layout over and over again. It's fun. I played Dark Souls maybe 4 years ago, but I feel like you could show me any screenshot and I could tell you exactly where everything near it is. GeoGuessr style. It feels more like you're actually venturing down unknown roads and finding secrets without a map, like you're actually exploring. Looking up at the screen makes you notice more of the little details of the environmental storytelling in the game, without your eyes getting sucked in by that darn minimap. And it's fine if a game has a map. The problem is when games have a map that's either too accessible or too useful. A cool idea that some games have is to use an incomplete map. Hollow Knight has a map, but everything I said before about Dark Souls still applies to it. The game has so many branching paths and secret hidden areas, it's a real adventure. When you first reach a new area in Hollow Knight, you straight up don't have the map for it. You have to scour through and hope to find Cornifer, the map guy, and you really have to explore to find him. But even without him, the game has some distinctive visual elements like mushrooms or certain enemy types, and you can use those to get a general idea of where you're going without having to constantly pull up a map. The thing about the map in Hollow Knight is that you have to push a button to see it, and it's not a very detailed map. Most of the time, the useful markers in that game are going to be the ones you set yourself. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has an area called Gungaga.
Me? Gungaga.
It's a forest area, and the level design makes it pretty hard to navigate even with the map. You can see where you need to go on the map, but you can't really tell how to get there. You have to jump around these mushrooms in the level and find little caverns. It feels really rewarding when you find new pathways and reach new areas. But even linear games like Amori feel like adventures without maps. I mean, that game has a map, but it's not very useful. You still get that sense of exploration because you have to remember where all the NPCs are, and you know that there are secret areas that don't show up on the world map. Like, the quest book might tell you that you have to return to this mole guy, but you still have to actually remember where he is. It makes you feel like you're part of the world because you actually have to get involved to complete the objectives. There's a sense of accomplishment that comes with memorizing the landmarks, the layout, and figuring out where you have to go next. I personally think it's a lot of fun, and I know a lot of others do too. That being said, minimaps do have their place, especially for accessibility. Now I know. There's a sense of perceived superiority among gamers, especially Dark Souls gamers, when talking about minimaps breaking immersion. It can break immersion to constantly have to pull out a full map. Minimaps are a good way developers can prevent players from pulling out a full map every time. In Final Fantasy XVI, I found myself constantly having to whip out the full map to find out where I was going. I had to do an annoying dance of having to walk a little bit, then memorize the route to the next thing, and then I forget it and I have to whip out the map again, and it was just terrible. People who are new to games often find that it makes the world a lot less daunting. I mean, there are some game worlds that are actually too big and confusing to navigate without a minimap. And honestly, some players just prefer the convenience. Now, there are ways to improve accessibility without a minimap, though. Games like Skyrim or Elden Ring have compasses at the top of the map. Final Fantasy XVI has a guidance system where Torgal, your dog, can lead you the right way if you push a button. And Chants of Sennaar has a button that highlights things you can interact with. Of course, individual level design matters a bunch too. In the Outer Wilds, each level is on a distinct planet, so you never really have to memorize an entire map. Instead, the natural layout of the levels breaks the world into chunks, which our tiny human brains are way better at memorizing. Each level also has a distinct visual style and set of colors, and there are general radio signals you can listen in onto to give you a rough sense of direction. Of course, minimaps are also great when immersion and exploration just don't really matter.
I'm Sephiroth!
Ain't Sephiroth the one who's supposed to be the dark part of Cloud's heart?
For some genres of games, like puzzle games, it could actually detract from the main goal of solving the puzzle if you're constantly having to pull out a map. Chants of Sennaar has this sewer level where I spent like 20 minutes just backtracking and being lost, even though I just had to find this one missing puzzle piece. One thing I haven't seen a game do is just ask you if you want a minimap when the game starts. It's the industry standard to just ask you what your preferred difficulty setting is when you first start, so it could be a good option to ask if you want a minimap too. Maybe even include some disclaimer text telling you to really think about it. But what do you think? Do you prefer having minimaps? What about compasses or other unique guidance systems in games? Let me know in the comments what your best and worst experiences were with maps in video games. Anyway, I hope this video made you appreciate games without maps a little more. Maybe you'll even consider turning off the minimap if it's optional in your next game. This video took a long time to make, so please hit that like and subscribe button if you liked it. I also have another video up on my channel about Kingdom Hearts, so give that a watch too. Big thanks to everyone who's been watching my videos. I've personally been getting a lot better at video editing, so I feel like the next video I make is just going to take me a lot less time to make. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.